Thank you, Padmashri, for that incredibly kind introduction. I'm Martin Jackson. I'm a distinguished engineer at Walmart. Not Walmart Stores Incorporated as we were known up until just a year ago, but just Walmart. The world's changing and we need to change with it. And we're talking today about being in this together and what the collaborative culture that we build as configuration management professionals can do to help us in that journey. So before we get too far, I am required to say that any reference to any commercial product, process, or service, or the use of any trade firm or corporation name is for information and convenience purposes only, and does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by Walmart Incorporated. You've probably heard of Walmart. You've probably heard of our founder, Sam Walton. Sam Walton was a man who never backed down from a challenge. He loved a challenge, and he loved to surprise people, and he loved to innovate. One of the quotes that he's best known for, and one of the things that we still have up on our walls in the offices today, is this one. I've always been driven to buck the system, to innovate, to take things beyond where they've been. If you can sincerely go along with the mentality behind that quote, then you have to be someone who embraces change, someone who embraces innovation, someone who embraces the new. And we like to think that we are that kind of company. But it's not just important to be excited about facing the future, about embracing change. It's also important how you go about those things. And to that end, Walmart has always practiced 4 basic beliefs that guide our culture in terms of how we interact with each other, how we interact with our suppliers, and how we interact with our customers. Our 4 basic beliefs are: strive for excellence. We always try to be better tomorrow than we are today. We respect the individual, because every single one of us, every person, has dignity and value. We always practice service to the customer, because we know that anyone can shop anywhere. They don't just have to shop with us. And finally, it's very important to always act with integrity, to always embody the highest standards of objectivity and honesty in our business and ethical dealings. Now, you may see that our 4 basic beliefs line up a little bit with the 4 DevOps pillars. Now, I'm not going to stand in front of you today and say that Sam Walton invented DevOps. Clearly, that's not the case. But because of the cultural principles that Sam taught and that we still practice at Walmart today, it was easier for us to adopt DevOps than it might have been otherwise. So looking back a few years to where and how we began our digital transformation and our journey to acceleration. The year was 2013, and there were 5 of us engineers. We were very fortunate to have a couple of things that are really crucial in these situations. We had executive backing, and we also had clear goals. We got this outrageous challenge to deploy configuration management in enforcing mode to every store in our global chain, and we had 2 months to do it. We'd been working for close to a year before that to develop a code base that would be suitable for building the foundation and a platform on which to build other automation and other platform services. But the challenge to actually go and deploy to the store chain was a significant one, and it was a vital one. It had a very clear endpoint, and we had very clear support. And let me tell you, it did not always go perfectly. And when things don't go perfectly, that support is really important. But that was 4 years ago. Even today, we continue to learn and grow as we continue along our journey to operate faster, to do more, and to do better. Today, our configuration management estate looks a lot more like this. When I got these slides approved, we were at 96,464 nodes. We built another 1,000 nodes in the last week. We're split about 60-40 between Linux and Windows. And the vast majority of these nodes are nodes that run in our stores and in our distribution centers. And so these are spread all over the world, in the US, and Canada, and the UK, and Japan, and in many other countries. You may wonder how many resources we manage. As of today, we manage over 94 million individual resources. Thank you, PuppetDB, for allowing us to count that. Averaging over 900 per node. But perhaps most significantly, and one of the things that I'm most proud of, is that the number of production commits that we have merged in our environment in the last 90 days, 778. We are averaging almost 12 commits going to production per working day, which is up 3 commits a day over where we were last year. So we are succeeding in moving faster, and that's incredibly exciting. During this journey so far, and as we continue into the future, we've been very deliberate about how we started and how we grow the practice. From the very beginning, we knew that we on the core Puppet team, which we call the compute management team, we have other responsibilities besides Puppet, but Puppet is one of the big ones. On the compute management team, we started with 3 core engineers, which, you know, I too am a liberal arts graduate, like a couple of the people who have come up before. I'm not a mathematical genius, but 3 core people doesn't seem to me like it would be enough to write all of the Puppet code that a large enterprise like Walmart would need. Our goal was never to be the ones who would write all the Puppet code for all of the needs of Walmart. We were started so that we could be an enablement team, so that we could help other people solve the problems that they needed to solve. We're the stewards of the tooling, and they are the ones that get to solve their own problems using that tooling. And so to that end, we wrote a lot of the initial code that was later built upon for the platform. But in the process of growing that code base, we've recruited volunteers from teams that are close to us in the organization, primarily the systems administration teams for the various lines of business that we operate. And as our code base has grown and as we found success, we have expanded to teams that are farther away in the organization, groups like our security engineering group, groups like middleware, and even some of our applications teams. The circle keeps growing. As a compute management team, we see ourselves as having 3 primary areas of responsibility. The first of them is managing Puppet itself. The first thing we do is we keep Puppet up to date. We take a lot of pride in running on the latest production quality Puppet release. And I'm sorry to say we're not on 2019 yet, but it won't be long. We're on 2018 1.4 right now, and we'll be talking about what it's going to take to get to 2019. We're not just going to do the LTS. We're going to do the latest production quality release, because any value that exists in those releases that doesn't exist in the LTS is value that we're not delivering to our customers, and that's an important thing. We realized very early on in our journey that no one could adopt the tooling faster than we could install it. And so we don't want to be the gate that keeps people from being able to use some of the new and interesting features that are available in the new version of the software that weren't available in the old one. And so that's a big deal. We've designed a classification structure which is flexible enough to hold all of the different roles and profiles and things that we need to model our business usage of those servers. And we give guidance to users on where servers should fall within that classification structure. We manage the code workflow and tooling, and this is one of the most important things that we do too, because the code workflow and tooling is what determines how stuff gets from idea to test to production. And we want that to happen as fast as possible. And finally, we also maintain testing frameworks. And so we're going to be actively working on enhancing our unit and acceptance testing programs. And one of our team members is in Bentonville right now, furiously working on finishing up our acceptance testing platform. Hey, Mitch. We believe that this is an expression of the DevOps pillar principle of automation, and we also see an expression of our Walmart cultural belief of striving for excellence here. The second major pillar of things that we do as a compute management team for Puppet includes knowledge sharing. Most importantly here, we write a lot of documentation, and we provide a lot of examples to people that we're hoping will use our tooling. And if you get a chance, please see on the live stream pre-recorded session the presentation by my colleague Colby Gettle, who's here with us today. We write a lot of documentation examples, not only for ourselves to understand how the tool works, but also for users to bootstrap them and to make it easy and comfortable for them to learn the process of how to deploy code. We provide group workshops. At least once every other week, we have office hours where people can come in, sit down with us, and work through problems. And we have actually committed solutions and fixes for issues in production in those workshops, which gets people a little excited sometimes, but it's fun to do. You get that immediate gratification of fixing a problem. When the group workshops are not sufficient, we will also provide individual consultations for people who believe that they need them. Often someone will be working on a thorny technical problem where there's a lot of complicated give and take that needs to happen. They need advice on how that's supposed to work. They may need to implement special custom backs for their classes. In at least one case, we've implemented helped a team implement a new provider. And those things are not necessarily things that will be broadly interesting, and so we do provide those individual consultations when people need them. During this whole process, we have to practice tons of patience and empathy. We work with the classifier all the time on the Puppet team, on the compute management team. We understand how the classifier works. We understand how Hiero works. The people who are just developing their first Puppet modules probably don't. It's our responsibility to help them understand so that they can make the best use of the tooling that we're providing. And here we see the DevOps principle of sharing and the Walmart principle of respect for the individual. Everyone has something to contribute, and we value that. The third and final major pillar of what we do on the compute management team, we call support. We take a great deal of pride in the latency that we have, which is almost none, between pull request submission, pull request approval, and pull request merges. Very often, within minutes of pull requests being submitted to our system, we will have them approved and merged. The delay time between when that pull request is submitted and when that pull request is merged is value that's lost. And for what purpose? Delay? There's no reason to wait. If we know that it's the right thing to do, we do it. We'll change classification for nodes that need it. Sometimes nodes will be misclassified in the wrong place in the structure. If people need their nodes reclassified, we're happy to do that for them. We maintain Puppet metrics to make sure that we understand how much infrastructure we need and where that infrastructure needs to be to support them. And we also are able to provide nice little dashboards like the slide that we saw earlier that talk about how many resources we're managing, how many nodes we're managing, and that sort of thing. Sometimes, when things don't go perfectly well, we have to answer a bunch of operations questions about Puppet. Did Puppet do this? Did Puppet not do this? When was the last time that this particular piece of code was deployed? We don't exactly relish being invited to those situations, but it's an important part of our responsibility to give the organization confidence that what we're doing is the right thing and that we have understanding of it and that it's under control. And finally, in some cases, when two different teams want to manage the same resource because their responsibilities overlap or just because of a simple misunderstanding, we'll have to broker resolution of duplicate resources. Often, when we bring those two teams together, they will easily be able to figure out between them which class, which module should manage that resource. But in case there needs to be a tiebreaker, we're there to be the tiebreaker. And here we see our value of service to the customer, because we always want to make sure that our customers have what they need as soon as that we can get it to them. And we see the DevOps pillar of culture. In return, our users provide a lot of value to us. Our users contribute to our overall success by owning and maintaining the code that they deploy. And as a senior engineer, there's nothing that's more exciting than seeing someone get to deploy something in production and the excitement that you see on people's faces when they've deployed a piece of code and they can stop worrying about something. I mean, that's a lot of what we have to do in infrastructure, is to make problems go away. And being able to help someone get to that point where they can make a problem go away is really exciting and really gratifying. We expect our users to be recognized for solving their own problems. When a user fixes a problem with Puppet, the compute management team is not recognized organizationally for that. The user who fixed the problem is. And that's exactly the way we want it. We want to grow the competence in the tooling. We want people to feel that they are the ones who are fixing their problems, because they are. We're just here to provide the tooling to help them do it. Owning code also means considering pull requests to their code. Lots of things change. We find new ways to deploy servers, new deployment patterns, new OS server versions, you name it. Whatever those changes are that come down the pike, when someone owns a class or module, they're representing themselves within our organization as the subject matter expert in that module, in that technology. And so they're logically the people that we should ask, is this the right thing to do to enshrine as a standard in our deployments? And so we expect those SMEs to consider pull requests when properly submitted. We expect our SMEs to maintain Hierodata. If passwords need to be rotated or if other things need to change, we expect our users to be able to submit those pull requests for Hierodata. And the Hierodata flow is a lot simpler and a lot more straightforward and doesn't require as much technical involvement as the full Puppet code development workflow, but they're very similar. And so some people who don't feel comfortable writing Puppet code can maintain Hierodata, and that works out well too. And finally, if our users feel that they are overwhelmed, if they're being asked questions that they can't answer about the tooling, then we're available to help. We're always available for consultations and for supplementary discussions in those kinds of environments where people are being asked questions that they can't answer. Looking back on how we began, where we focused our efforts at the very beginning, we started by developing code that was very, I won't say simple. There are very few simple things that happen in an environment our size, but they were self-contained. They were straightforward to solve. Here are a few examples of some of the early modules that we developed during our first major bout of Puppet development. We learned how to manage the Puppet agent itself, and this is one of the things that led us to our policy of never deploying in no-op mode. If we have to change where the Puppet agent's talking or any of the configuration parameters about the Puppet agent, how often it runs, and you don't have the ability to actually fix the problem that you're trying to fix because the thing's in no-op mode, then you can't fix it. And what's the point of configuration management? So we deployed a module to manage the Puppet agent at the very beginning. One of the big drivers behind our initial deployment to the stores, to the global store chain, was managing system time. It's incredible how many infrastructure problems just go away when time is in sync everywhere all the time. We found that to be the case too. Managing system time is a very low effort thing to do and has incredible benefits. When we first started developing modules on Windows, one of the first things that we managed was proxy settings. Proxy settings can be very important if your internet security policy requires them. And if you have to move from one set of proxies to another set of proxies, having a system like this makes it a lot easier. And finally, we worked a lot on scheduled tasks. Scheduled tasks in Windows and cron jobs in Linux. A lot of these things are the dull, dry, dreary systems administration tasks we're all familiar with. They're not sexy, they're not exciting, but they're certainly very necessary. And being able to manage these things with a desired state configuration management system makes it a lot easier than not having one. So we were developing all of these modules, and a lot of individual teams were having a lot of success deploying these modules and working with us to do all this work. But the world was not standing still around us. The most obvious shared responsibility that we all have is security. And from the time that we began our Puppet journey to now, security threats have certainly gained much higher visibility. All the major bugs have names now. You have Heartbleed, you have Poodle, you have Shell Shock. They have websites. This is not the world that we lived in 2005, but it's the world that we live in now. And as a result of these high-profile security vulnerabilities, vulnerability remediation programs have gotten a lot more traction in large organizations, and larger organizations have gotten a lot more serious about making sure that infrastructure is patched. And of course, there have been more legal and compliance environments, including the GDPR laws in the European Union for privacy, which require enhanced attribution on infrastructure, and the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, version 3, which requires an awful lot more from infrastructure than previous versions have. And so other groups were able to step up, and together we rose to meet these new security challenges. And you can look at some of these examples. What they all have in common together is that they require collaboration between infrastructure and security to implement correctly. And as we were working through all of these things, I'm sad to say, we needed their help. It's not realistic to expect one team to know everything that can possibly be known. Infrastructure teams have a responsibility to maintain security, but the infrastructure teams aren't going to be watching the CVE tracker lists like the security teams will. And so the security teams give us requirements. We work on the details of how those requirements need to be fulfilled on the systems, and it works out pretty well. And so we're expanding into territory that we never thought possible 10 years ago. Federated authentication, remote logging at a large scale, file integrity monitoring. All of these things are things that we are working together with our security groups to achieve today and now. And that code base continues to grow. Looking back, I believe that we were extraordinarily fortunate to have a strong cultural base, one that encouraged the embracing change, as well as support from our executive leadership. Because not everything is going to go well the first time, and we had to try several times in the early going. We had support and clear success criteria, and those are so critical on this journey. We realized right at the very beginning that we would never be able to do all the work that needed to be done by ourselves. We could only be successful if we were the team that empowered other teams to get their work done, because that is a model that scales. We've come such a long ways, but we've got so much more to do. The world still isn't standing still. The competitive landscape is more vibrant than it almost ever has been before in retail, and we're excited to face it. We believe that we can go faster. We believe that we can do more. We believe that we can achieve more by working together. Looking off into the future, what are we going to find ourselves doing? We believe right now that the most important thing that we can do is to take the scariness out of deployment for certain kinds of changes by enhancing our unit and acceptance testing programs. There's a moment when your finger hovers over the merge button. Yeah, you know what I mean, don't you? We want to take that hesitation out. And that's what we believe that good unit and acceptance testing programs will do. We want to accelerate the pace at which change can be made. We don't want to slow it down. We want to connect our systems with more lifecycle processes, both commissioning systems and decommissioning systems. Because the easier it is to get new systems and the easier it is to do away with old ones, the faster everyone can go. We believe that there are going to be a lot more operating systems and architectures, and we want to be able to give those features and functions to our users, because the world isn't standing still there either. Just this year, we've seen the release of an enterprise version of Ubuntu, an enterprise version of SLES from SUSE. We just saw the general availability release of Windows 2019, and next year we'll probably see a release of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. All of those things will require some change to the code base. They'll require something from us to make use of some of those new features. And we're ready to face those challenges and to bring those features to our users. And as our organization blooms and grows, some people in our organization are going to move on. People are going to want to move into management. They're going to get promoted. They're going to go to other teams. Infrastructure people come to security. Security people come to infrastructure. We'll have to keep doing that training. And it's important as more people come to understand how the product works and how they can be successful with the product. We want to see those people grow. We don't want people to feel trapped, stuck in a particular role. We're incredibly excited to face what challenges the future has to hold. We believe that we have a very strong collaborative community at Walmart, and we're very proud to be members of the Puppet community as well. Thank you. I'm Mjolnir40K, and I'm around on the community Slack all the time, and I'll be available to answer questions in the channel too. Thank you.